I don't know if I should be clapping with your words or the sound or the visual.
It's a very delicate system.
Okay, we're good.
All right. You ready to start when I'm finished with my sentence?
Yep.
All right. It's time to complete the Millergy. We watched Stephen Miller's Visions, which means it's time for another Portland at the Movies.
In a world, in a time, in a land of eternal beauty, all that stands between a city and a disaster. In a city where anything can happen. If you thought you had seen it all.
I'm asking the questions around here. Do you know what a steer is? Yes. What is it? It's a cow. What kind of cow? A cow, you know. Oh.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Portland at the Movies. My name is Todd Workhoven, and I am joined, as always, by Mark Middleton. How are you, Mark?
I'm very well.
Good. And, of course, Brian, the Unipiper Kid. How are you, Brian?
Doing A-OK.
Good. So we are gathered together via Skype once again to talk about the third in a row. I don't think we've ever done that with anyone else. Movie from a director named Stephen Miller, and the movie is called Visions. I'm holding the VHS copy right here in my hands, and I'm just noticing right now that the tagline to this movie is "When reality and imagination become one," which I thought was interesting. I guess it sort of applies to the movie, maybe. So, we're gonna dig into that. This is, like I said, the third Stephen Miller movie that we have done, and he has only done
the
three
Millergy.
movies.
I really like that.
The Millergy, yeah. So we did Back Time and Love and Dynamite, and this month we've got Visions. So.
And I guess appropriately enough, we watched them in reverse order, which is kind of fitting for starting with the movie about time travel.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Now, just kind of off the bat, now, we all really liked Back Time. Did you guys enjoy Love and Dynamite? I kind of forget.
It was fun to watch Grizzly Adams blow things up. Other than that, it's entirely forgettable. I remember that there was the one-arm guy that I recognized from this movie. That's all.
Yes, there's several of our actors that not only showed up in Stephen Miller's other movies, but a couple other, or at least one other Portland at the movie. Well, no, David Walker also makes an appearance in that. Did you catch him?
Oh, yes.
He was a strip club patron and got like 0.5 seconds of screen time. I wasn't expecting him because I don't remember him bringing it up, but I was watching it today and I immediately texted him with a picture. I was like, "Is this you?" So it was indeed him. Oh, yep, there he is. Looking up at that strip. He's got a pretty great facial expression.
He does.
But who wants to kind of take us through what the movie Visions is about?
Go for it, Brian.
Before we get into that,
okay,
why don't we just talk about our favorite quotes from the movie since we already heard one? Let's start the audience off with something that they might actually find entertaining.
What's a gelding?
Start us off then, Brian.
Well, so we just heard from Mark. I would say, Mark, that was a pretty good choice for a quote. That was one of the little kids in the movie, was it not?
That was, yeah. And so there's two kids, and they get questioned by the local police lieutenant, Bright. What was his name? I think his name is Bright. And one of the questions that he asks, the lieutenant asks his officers, "Do you know what a steer is?" And yeah, it's a castrated bull. And do you know what a gelding is? It's a castrated horse. Yes. And then he walks away.
And then he later asked, those children the same question. The kids had some pretty great lines. One of them being, "Look, what is it? Look, Brad, a killer did that when he was referring to the bruises on his arm, which is pretty great. I also liked, so you're a kink, which one of the officers asked when they found pornography at someone's house.
There was another great one from one of the kids, and it wasn't just their line, but it was the line immediately following what they said that was like from a different scene, but together it just, I wasn't even really paying attention to the movie, but then I heard it and I was like, that was genius. So one of the kids are like hiding and waiting for somebody to leave, and they're like crouched down, and the one kid says, "My butt hurts." And then cut to the cops, and the cop says, "The back door is wide open, sir."
I didn't catch that. That's amazing.
I did not catch that either.
It was genius.
So I guess to set up this movie, should I just, well, the back is pretty long, so I won't read that, but our main character, whose name is Dan, has visions of murders that they don't ever say they're in Portland, but there's a serial killer on the loose in this movie who's killed, I don't know what, 4 or 5 people, something like that. Yeah. And our main character Dan sees visions of these people getting killed and some other things that he can't quite figure out, so he becomes the main suspect of the police because he always seems to have knowledge of this. And so the story revolves around both him trying to figure out the killer and evade the police from bringing him in as a suspect. Does that sort of sum it up?
And I guess saving his own life because he starts having visions of himself getting killed.
Yeah, and that, I think we'll kind of get to it as we kind of get through the movie, but I don't know that the visions aspect of the movie Visions was really adequately explained very much. So we also, as Mark mentioned, have the same actor as in Love and Dynamite, which I don't think he was in Back Time, but I forgot to write his name down, but he is the one-armed man, which is also a running joke because the children in this movie keep asking him, "How'd you lose that arm?" And he never answers the question and just ends up threatening him by grabbing one of the kids by the wrist and leaving a bruise. And that's why the one kid said, "A killer did this," because the one-armed man was also a suspect. Michael, I believe, is his name, is in the movie. So
that was actually another really good quote. The kids yell at him, "How'd you lose your arm?" And then do you remember what his response was?
You never said how you lost your brain.
Yeah, how'd you lose your brain?
Which an adult said to a child, like a 10-year-old.
Sick burn, mister.
You'd think he would have a better response, up to that point.
A shark ate it, yeah.
Totally. You'd make up all sorts of things. I did think, kind of before we get too deep into it, I kept writing how everything was surprisingly competent. Like, I thought the acting was good, the sound was good, which usually in these really low budget movies, the sound is the thing that suffers the most. And the sound was very good through this whole time. And the shots were fairly decent. And so I was surprised that, especially since that this was his first one that that he made, but the third one we watched, how
the soundtrack wasn't jarring like others that we've seen. I agree. I feel like generally the plot was nonsensical in some ways and meandered around and everything, but we got to see a lot of old school Portland, 1989 Portland. So things like the White Eagle all by itself, yes, which is now surrounded by their patio on one side and other buildings on the other side.
Well, it was funny because when that building came up, I mean, we were watching a VHS rip of it, so the quality is not very good. And I was like, oh, that's that restaurant next to the White Eagle, and then I realized, oh no, that's just the White Eagle by itself.
Yep.
Yeah. I will say that the picture was really dark. I don't know if that was, just an artifact of it being ripped from the VHS, but it was really hard to see in a lot of places.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of great stuff. And in fact, in our little window now, we're watching one of the scenes. A lot of this takes place at a strip club called Delilah's. Are we just assuming that was a fake club just for this movie? Because it looked very strange.
So we think,
Yeah,
we think the outside is definitely fake, but they do reference in the credits the pink pearl.
I saw that,
and
which sounds very strip club.
It sounds very strip club. And Brian, you said you might have found something about that.
Yeah, so I did figure out where the Pink Pearl was located, and it's was a 14th and Hawthorne, which is currently where Pokemon sits.
Pokemon. Oh, is that like a poke restaurant?
It is a poke restaurant. I'm surprised Mark didn't say anything because it's one of his favorites, but I see that he has left his chair.
He stormed out to go to Pokemon. But one of the, yeah, so actually, speaking of actors that have been in other movies, one of the women who play the stripper in this movie is Sandra Greenberg, who was the star of Fatal Revenge. So another tie in there, and we'll get to the joke that she does later, which I thought was very funny. Well, I guess we just do it now. But at one point,
it was pretty good.
She's having this conversation with some patrons while she's stripping, and she's talking about how monkeys don't need boobs because for some reason, but humans developed to stand up, and that's why boobs are important or something, like just going on and on. And she's got this like, not a Betty Boop voice, but like a very like dumb stripper voice. And it kind of plays through that scene, and then it shows her going backstage, and all of a sudden she just talks in this like completely normal voice, and how she's just putting this on for the dumb customers. And I thought that was a great little touch to that character.
Yeah, it was a really awkward start to the conversation because the guy just starts talking to the stripper about like, yeah, we're expecting the fourth kid any day now. I'm like,
yes,
is that normal conversation for your stripper?
And I felt a little silly not being really a patron of strip clubs. I'm like, do people just like have open conversations as the stripper is there performing? Is that like a thing that happens? Or I couldn't quite figure out. Yeah. But
welcome back, Mark.
Welcome back, Mark. We're talking about strippers.
Yay.
But also things that were in another movie. There was a cameo by something that appeared in Love and Dynamite, and that was the bathroom. Did you guys notice that the bathroom in Dan's house was the same bathroom as the one in Love and Dynamite? So that must be Stephen Miller's house.
Oh, that's awesome.
Interesting.
So I thought that was what I was like, I recognize this bathroom.
Well, there was since we're talking sort of locations now, did anyone else get a jolt in their memory from the slide?
I did.
No.
Was that in the Ninja movie?
I think it was in
They're
Brain
not
Smasher.
ninjas.
Yeah. You're right. The Ninja movie, Brain Smasher.
Yeah.
Oh, funny.
Yeah.
I thought that looked super fun.
So I don't know if that's like a common feature for empty warehouses or if it's the same slide, but
it must have been like the garbage slide before OSHA got involved, because like now they're all outdoors made of trash cans.
I think it's for package movement within a facility. So you have the warehouse on the third floor that packs it up and sends it down to the mailing room downstairs, and they just send it down the chute.
Okay. So I feel like there's not a whole lot that actually happens in this movie, so I don't know how to move. I don't really know how to move through it. I guess. Okay. So two other things about people from other movies. So one of the main characters is J.R. Pella, who showed up in Fatal Revenge, showed up in Love and Dynamite. And I thought he was really good. He played one of the police officers in this movie. But Also a cameo from Back Time was Sherry Frund.
Zymo.
Really?
Zymo. What is Zymo showed up in this movie?
Where? What? When?
There was this scene when the main character Dan, the guy who's having the visions, is running away from the police because they think they found a body buried in his backyard. And so they're after him thinking he's a serial killer. And so he's on his bicycle riding under all the bridges, like under 405 and stuff like that. And he's patching himself up like Rambo style, like just in a tunnel, in the sewer. And all of a sudden in the distance, you see a guy with an eye patch and a little person, a midget, like walking towards him. They come. The little person is Sherry Frund, who played Zymo, and they're just in it for a scene, and they kind of patch him up and send him back on his way. I was like, that is so great.
That's awesome. I did find her contact information. She is in Salem, Oregon, and I texted the phone number, but I think it's a landline. So, and I wasn't bold enough to call it.
Yeah, I don't. When we have some sort of post-quarantine Portland at the movies a gala event, we're gonna have all of these actors come, and that would be amazing.
Hello, is this Zymo?
Yes.
Will you come to our party and also tell us what a Zymo is? But so
speaking of J.R. Pella, no wait, J.R. That's David Walker's friend.
Yes.
Yes.
Who played the rookie police officer in this film. I loved how it's almost like they didn't want to pay for the rights to some songs, so they just had him sing the songs in the car.
I totally noticed that, like, the radio should have been on in the background and he was singing to it, but instead it was like the police band, saying like where people are and stuff like that. But I totally noticed that they must not have gotten the rights to those songs. So Dan, who is the main character of this movie, is a younger guy that's dating a woman named Ariana. And Dan is having these visions and keeps seeing things and things about the murders, and then finally sees a vision of himself being murdered by Ariana. And so he keeps going to the police and saying, I'm having these visions. The police don't believe him. Eventually, what happens then?
Well, they accuse him.
He blacks out.
Right. And so he blacks out and finds himself in his bathtub with clothes that are all muddy. He can't figure out how he got there, if it was just another vision, all of that. But it turns out there's a freshly dug grave in Dan's backyard that he doesn't know how he got there. So the police come and they dig it up and they find a bunch of pornography. Which eventually the little neighbor kids, I was all excited because the neighbor kids live at a house where they're playing basketball in the driveway. And it looked exactly like the driveway from A Walk in Her Shoes, where that guy lived next door and put up that house that's by Brian, where you live.
Yeah.
It was not. But the kids see that the police dug up this grave but didn't find a body. They found porn. So later the little kids come back at night and start digging up the grave. But in between those two things, someone has killed a police officer and buried him in that grave. So now everybody thinks that Dan is the actual killer.
That was actually a pretty clever setup. I don't think I've ever seen that in a film before, where you dig a grave specifically for the police to dig it up for the sole purpose of then putting a body in there later so the police wouldn't think that, we've already checked that.
I did think that was pretty great too.
Yeah.
And there's a little thing about proving that the serial killer must have been left-handed because of the way that they found an iron with a plug-in on a certain side in the house. And like some of those little touches were kind of neat, I thought.
Yeah, it's kind of like the script to Back Time, where, there's actually a couple clever things under there.
Totally. So as Dan, our main character, is having these visions and trying to escape and trying to figure things out. He has his friend Michael, which is the one-armed man, that he's kind of confiding in. Michael is the one who owns the strip club, which is why there's a bunch of scenes there. I couldn't figure out if Ariana, the girlfriend, did she work at the strip club or used to, or what was that?
No, she worked there. She was a cocktail waitress there. Remember, Dan went and saw her at work, and she's like, "I'm busy. I'm working. Why are you here?" And she had a tray of drinks. So so was that the strip club or was that the bar that had the
I
dart?
thought they were. I kind of thought they were the same place, but it could
Are
be
they?
that they were
Okay.
different locations.
Okay.
I thought it was the same place too, and I think later they make references to Ariana back when she used to dance. So it sounds like maybe she used to strip there.
Right. Okay. So some of these visions. Oh, we're seeing now in the video box, not Peter Graves, who is one of the police officers, with not Robert Duvall. But some of the visions that Dan has, I thought were really cool. And one of the effects that they did, Dan was driving in the car and he looks in the rearview mirror, and sees someone in the back seat that's not really there, and sees them and then doesn't see them, and that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden you see his lap as he's sitting in the car, and up through his thighs by his crotch comes a knife, like out from under the seat. And they do that, and once at the very end, and I won't spoil the ending, but there's an attack, a kind of a vision attack in the car again, where like hands are coming out of the floorboards and like grabbing this person, and like I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah.
That was well done for sure.
Yeah.
It reminded me of vintage Freddy Krueger.
Yes.
And it did seem like this movie had almost a budget that seems higher than both Back Time and Love and Dynamite.
I mean, it's possible when you don't have to pay for a main star like Tom Baker or Dan Haggerty. Maybe you have a little bit budget for production.
Or
That's true. I didn't think of that. There was no stunt casting.
or he hadn't
Yeah.
yet burnt through his money making his first movie.
That's true. It does say on the back that Visions is only available on VHS. So,
I felt like the stunt casting in this film were just the strippers.
that's where they spent all their money
Yeah.
on Sandra Greenberg.
There's the bathroom.
Oh yeah, there's the bathroom. I totally recognize the mirror, and they go down in that weird sink.
With Kool-Aid in it.
Boy,
Should we just talk about how it ends?
I guess and again, on this one, I've only watched this movie once. I went back to I only watched Back Time once, and I really enjoyed that. So I was like, well, I'll give it the full Stephen Miller experience again, and just do a one viewing of it. And I did enjoy this movie. I didn't really enjoy it like how I really enjoyed Back Time, but I kept writing down how astonishingly competent it was.
I would say that this is the quintessential Portland at the movies movie, where it was just completely forgettable in a way, but there's lots of old Portland and it's nothing to write home about. It just felt very middle of the road for this show.
And kind of generic down to the fact that they don't ever mention Portland.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
closest we get, I think, once they say that they're on Klickitat Street.
Yep, they did. So there is, as this movie is unfolding, and we as the audience can see that Dan is not the murderer, because we see him, doing other things as some murders are taking place. When the body in his backyard gets buried, he's off doing something else. And then at one point where the one-armed man, Michael, is doing something for his bar, Michael starts having visions. So he looks down the alley and also has these visions of things that either are in the past. It's not really clear what he's seeing, but they
So-
both have this power.
Perhaps he has imagination and Dan has visions, and that's where they collide.
That's where they become one. That's where the
Become
tagline
one.
comes from. So as Dan is on the run and as the police are chasing him, we the audience know that it's not him. And then we find out that it is indeed Michael, spoiler alert, doing these murders. But up to this point, they all think the serial killer is a female because they are only finding what they call, the serial killer is, quote, killing macho assholes. And so they think it's a woman that is doing it because it's all men that have been killed. But it turns out it's been Michael all along, but I don't know why.
I didn't understand why either. And shock, it was the one-armed man.
Yeah.
Spoilers for The Fugitive. It is the one-armed man. But as it's kind of being shown to the audience that Michael is the killer, he is talking to Dan about Dan's visions. And Michael says, I developed you. How many people can get inside each other's heads? And so it makes it sound like kind of like The Shining, I guess, where they have this power, or none of that is really explained at all.
Yeah, I don't
agree.
I totally agree. What is their history? Like, what, how do Dan and Michael know each other?
I don't think they ever say it. A little stranger because there is an age disparity. I feel like Michael is, a good 10 or maybe even 15 years older than Dan.
Yes.
Yeah, as far as I could figure out, their only connection was that Dan used to date Ariana, who worked at the club that Michael seemed to manage.
Oh yeah, so they know each other through work, I guess. Work at the strip club.
Yeah.
So,
there's. I don't think it's explained really well.
This is where the movie falls apart.
This doesn't have the tight script of Back Time.
Wait, was this written by Stephen Miller?
Yes, written
Yes.
and directed.
Yep.
Well, and co-written by Tom Taylor, who I believe is the one-armed man. So, but Tom Taylor also, let me check to make sure, was a co-writer on. Oh, not a co-writer on Love and Dynamite. And not a co-writer on Back Time. So they must have obviously had a relationship.
I'm trying to see who wrote Back Time, because I want to say it wasn't Stephen Miller.
No, Back Time was written and directed by Stephen Miller.
Okay.
So, at least according to the VHS box.
Oh.
What else?
I really liked the fact that Michael had a knife that shot out of his arm stump.
Yes. So at the end of the movie, after we know it's him, Michael has stolen a car and is driving away, presumably to escape because he framed Daniel for it. And so he's making an escape, and that's where we have the other vision where hands come out of the floorboards. There's a really cool one where a hand came out and grabbed his foot and pressed down on the gas pedal, and so there's all this stuff happening, and he's weaving around, and he's that's not part of it though. That's not even the knife
that
scene.
follows. That's the final scene. So before that, he is in the car with the police.
In the police car, right?
He's in the police car, and they're going. They're starting to piece things together, and they're like, you you couldn't, I couldn't have done it because the killer was left-handed. They saw the bruise of the right hand holding the victim and the cuts from the left hand. And so they had decisively concluded that the killer was left-handed. And he's like, look, guys, I don't even have a left hand. And they're like, well, wow, maybe he's right. And then a switchblade pops out of his stump covering. And
I was going to say, it's a stump covering, which was kind of cool, I thought. It's just like a little cap. So that, because he was like lifting stuff and all that, and they show it, and just a knife. And I wrote down in all capital letters, holy shit, a knife in his stump.
Yes.
I was so excited.
And then he murders the 2 cops in the car. And so
that's right. And that's how he gets the car.
Right. And so he gets the car, but later he has visions of those cops attacking him in his car. The final
Okay, I wasn't sure who the people in those visions were, if it was like all the other people that he killed.
Yeah.
It was the cops.
It was the cop that got buried, and it was the cops that were in the car that he murdered. But I didn't see. So I think there were 3 people in the car. It was the 3 cops that he killed.
Okay.
And then the movie actually ends with you see the car driving away, swerving all over the road, knowing that those like spirits are in the car and sort of are controlling him driving the car. But then if you stay through and watch all of the end credits at the very end, did you hear the sting at the end of the movie?
No.
I watched it all until the credits were done.
At the very end of the credits, you hear a car crash, implying that those spirits ultimately resulted in him crashing the car and perhaps
did not catch that.
Killed.
That's great.
Oh, that's great. And that he was weaving around in that car, I think, by off the Columbia River there by, what is that? The road that is it just airport road that goes past up on that berm?
I don't think. I
was wondering if that might be Cascade Locks, because I noticed they
you're right.
Cascade Locks.
Yep.
You're right. They also thanked Phil Roth. Did you see that?
Oh, really?
He was one of the. And there was a lot of songs written and performed by a band called Fashion Ambulance.
Yeah.
Which is pretty great. Mark, can you play sound over there?
I can, yes.
Can you go to like 36 minutes and 10 seconds or so? I wanted to maybe play a little bit of the strippers' conversation about monkeys and boobs.
Oh my goodness, yes. Let's see what I got here.
That was a pretty good conversation.
Okay, let's see if I can do this.
So while Mark is queuing that up, can we talk about the logistics of how you handcuff somebody with only one arm?
I wrote that down as well. They're like, cuff him, boys. Arms behind his back. But did you hear what they said?
No.
They go, cuff him, just cuff his arm to his belt.
Oh, because I actually wrote that down. I was wondering if that's how they might do it. And okay, that's cool.
There you go. That's how you cuff a one-armed man, is you probably cuff it to the belt or the loop or something like that. But yeah, that was pretty funny. They were trying to handcuff a one-armed man. Okay. And it was cool at the very end. So at the very end, Michael, the one-armed man, is telling his whole plan to Dan and Dan's girlfriend, Ariana. Ariana is like duct taped up to the stripper pole in the club, and so she can't move. They all get in a tussle, and Ariana grabs Michael by the throat with her legs and thighs because that's all she can move. So she like does some sort of hammerlock knee thing onto him, and I thought that was a cool way to incorporate her into the final fight.
Okay, let's see what I got here. Can you hear this?
Yes.
Leastwise, that's what I read in this book. Take boobs.
Sure, honey, anytime.
That's what I mean. Why are boobs such a turn on? So people can mate, that's why. You see, it's a survival thing. But monkeys don't need boobs to mate, and they reproduce just fine. So what's the diff? Well, I'll tell you. Because monkeys walk around on all fours, and they do it from behind. But when our caveman ancestors started walking around upright, they had to learn to do it from the front. Which is why buns just don't make it anymore.
No, I got nothing against buns.
That's exactly what I mean. Boobs look like buns, so that when you guys look at us gals face to face, you get turned on.
So yeah, boobs look like buns, so that it's a primordial response, so that we
can do it from
recognize
the
that.
front.
Yeah.
So that, I believe, was Sandra Greenberg playing that role. And then you see after that is when she goes backstage and has the normal voice and is like, yeah, men are morons, or whatever she says to the other dancers and stuff like that, which is great.
Sandra Greenberg, who would go on to star in Playboy's parody adaptation of Max Headroom.
She did. I did. And I don't mean to bring... Oh, didn't she have, what was the name in that? Max Legroom or something like that?
Oh, yeah, it was something.
That's the
ridiculous
airplane
like that.
Yeah.
parody.
So yeah, but she was good. And again, I mean, several times I wrote how surprised I was at either the acting or the music or the fact that they're like, even in some of the crowd scenes, there was a crowd there, because we've seen a lot of those where they're like at the strip club and it's like clearly there's one person, they couldn't afford extras, and like there's one person, but this movie felt kind of filled out a little bit with even some of that. So there's the scene with the knife up through the seat, which is cool too. So on the Miller scale then, how are we viewing his trilogy? Were we just so in love with Back Time that we were glamored?
Yeah, well, I personally liked Back Time the best of the three, and this is solid second, and the one with Grizzly Adams is a forgettable third in my scaling.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Especially the one takeaway I remember from Love and Dynamite last month was that it was just mostly filler. Because remember they played the credits twice and it was still like 70 minutes long. It does surprise me though, and I guess I put zero effort into finding Stephen Miller, but it surprises me that this is all he did. Like we've seen a lot of that more hacky directors, Phil Roth included, like that just go on to keep making movies and making them. And it kind of surprised me that we can't really track what happened to this guy, which is kind of a shame.
It's like he had, just 3 ideas in his head, and that was it.
Yep.
He was in and he's out. He knew when to quit.
You can't improve on perfection.
Well, it's interesting because I thought we would be going backwards in quality as we went, backwards in his filmography. I wish that, because when I think back about Back Time, I don't remember it being as competently filmed and acted as this one. So I was surprised, if Back Time had been filmed in the same quality and care that this one has, it would have been even a way better movie. So it's interesting to see that quality difference between, and I wonder if they were just able to hire a good cinematographer for this one, or someone that kind of more knew what they were doing, or I'm not quite sure what happened there.
This one definitely felt more like a movie, whereas Back Time felt a little bit more like an amateur cool project.
It did. This one felt like a TV movie, kind of, because it wasn't. It felt very constricted.
I'd say Back Time was probably the most ambitious with the different sets and the plot lines, trying to put it together, the costuming and the characters, and that was like, let's go out with a big idea, and so that it's really hard to do sci-fi on a small budget, and it always looks corny when you've got a small budget. So
that is true. And they did spend quite a bit of money on the costumes here, which we remarked over and over and over.
Yeah.
Were really good. So
yeah, this is just a crime drama. Yeah.
There's David Walker. I did really like, so as Dan is being chased, he's kind of being chased to the district that's kind of underneath the overpasses by 405 and I-5, and he goes into an abandoned building and gets chased by J.R. Pella, who is the rookie police officer. And they're running through this abandoned building, and he finds his way into a bathroom that's locked. And I thought he was going to, hide in the closet or something like that. But he breaks out the window, and I was like, okay, well, he's going to jump. Well, they established he's on the second floor, so he can't jump. And then he die-hards it out the window with the cloth, those old cloth towel rolls that come in bathrooms to wipe your hand off. He pulls all of that out and like rappels down the side of the building, which I thought was pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah, it was clever.
We have not talked about one of the greatest scenes in this movie yet.
Ooh.
Do you remember when the one-armed man threw darts into another man's back?
Amazing. So there's a guy in the in the bar in the strip club that is what was his offense? What was he doing wrong?
I think maybe he was just harassing one of the
had a knife?
waitresses. Maybe
was there, no, that wasn't a knife. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he called her a cow.
Right, and so Michael. Now, does he own the club, or does he manage?
I kind of felt like he was the owner or manager, like the boss.
He's in charge, and so instead of walking over to him, 10 feet or whatever, and dealing with it in person, he commences to throw 3 darts into his body, 2 in the back and 1 in the arm, and gets him that way.
And then he walks over to the guy who got the darts thrown at him and said, "Don't worry, I hit all your fleshy parts or your fatty parts or whatever."
Just a flesh wound.
And it was surprisingly effective.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would think that would stop a lot of people just to have 3 darts thrown at them.
Or enrage them. Like if you've got an angry drunk customer and you throw a dart into their arm, they're not going to be more docile. I feel like they would.
But if he's able to aim like that from across a bar, I think even a drunk guy would know, oh, he could just hit me square in the forehead or wherever he wants to hit me.
Take an eye out.
There was another part of the kind of the visions aspect. We already said it was very not explained. But after Dan has another vision of Ariana, his girlfriend, killing him after he takes a bath, Dan says to her, "You killed yourself," meaning in the vision he just had. And Ariana says, "Well, good. Maybe you won't see me that way anymore." What does that mean?
Maybe in the visions, I'm dead now, and so you're not going to see me in the visions anymore. So that
I thought it was
chain of the visions is now done because he's what's showing now is there's a little clip of Michael just chugging beers as the manager of the bar, and he takes 2 down. I didn't understand that.
They really filmed that.
Yeah,
I did wonder if it was fake beer.
Probably, but
but yeah, no, that was great because that's right after and that's weird because that's right after he sees the visions himself in the alley. Right. He gets freaked out, comes right in, and has 2 quick drinks. But at the end of the movie, we are led to believe that he is the mastermind and can also tap into or give other people visions. So why at this point in the movie is he all freaked out enough to go drink a whole bunch after seeing the visions?
Yes. No idea.
And now we're seeing Dan. There's a scene of him in front of a fireplace. He's trying to like figure out the visions and try to like, do they mean something? He's trying to do the Ouija board of like, spirit, if you're in here, come out or whatever. And he's talking to the fire saying, you know, who are you?
real.
Who are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's never really clear either.
Yeah. There's a lot that kind of breaks down in this, but yeah, it's kind of fun to watch.
Did you catch any of this? We talked about the man with the eye patch and Sherry Froond. There's a scene where they find Dan in the drainage ditch and they help patch Dan up, but then the old man with the eye patch is going on and on about something, but I couldn't make heads or tails of it. Does anyone remember that, or can we listen to that? Or
it was ramblings of a homeless person. Was
it meant to be that, or was it meant to like be meaningful in the larger sense of the movie?
Let me see if I can find a little segment of that. I don't remember.
Okay, because if that, like, from that scene, from there being a man with an eye patch and a little person, it felt like maybe there was a little surrealism going on that we were supposed to glean a message.
Oh yeah, and the scene also has water in the background, and so there's.
So we're not going to be able to hear anything.
It's pretty noisy, but I'll play what we got. Can you hear this?
A couple of other plants too.
Yes.
Don't even have no names. This I had snatched out by a critter that looked like a possum, bigger than a Cadillac. Somewhere's coming out in the middle of the Big Dipper. Something figured out.
Yeah. So it goes on, but I think generally it's just ramblings of a homeless person.
Okay, it seemed like that was our moment to get like the wise, spiritual look at things that were happening, but I guess not.
No.
I'm giving it too much credit. Well, is there anything else to talk about this movie? I feel like we're kind of retreading, but like I didn't dislike this movie.
It didn't make me hate it. I wasn't frustrated by it too much.
Were there any other locations that
yeah, that's what I was gonna get at, the locations. Primarily some bridge shots in this film.
Yeah, they did take a nice jog downtown on the waterfront.
Yep.
Yeah, we get that and the steel bridge.
Where was that big at the very beginning there? Someone standing in front of a giant neon sign that says North Town.
Yeah, I don't
know what that is.
Like
I don't know.
Worth Town?
Maybe.
Yeah, I didn't understand. I didn't get that.
Yeah, it was an obscured sign that was like a red neon sign, and so we got the Orth of Worth or North or something, and the mostly of town. So I don't know.
Huh. Yeah, that was very stupid. But other than the strip club, and then there was that chase scene down kind of where the White Eagle and stuff was. A lot of it was just interior shots. So not a whole lot of actual Portland other than the nice bridge shots and a couple of them. So
yep.
Yeah,
I'm just looking at the cover right now and realizing how bad it is.
The silhouette.
Yes, I'll hold it up for the camera.
The silhouette of a stripper butt, and and we've got the cover on the graphic as well. But
there it is, right there.
But and then is that Dan's face?
I think it must be. At first, I
so.
thought it was a woman, but that wouldn't make sense.
And it doesn't even fill the whole cover. It's just like 40%.
Use less ink that way.
I'm just looking again at the end when Michael is yelling at Dan, because the way the movie formats itself at this point, the reveal that Michael has been the killer the whole time, it sounded like Michael was casting visions into Dan in order to, kind of like in Harvest of Fear. Do you remember like when the dad and the son were like handing things off to each other? And it kind of sounded like, I'm grooming you, because at one point Michael says, I developed you. So it was very strange that.
Well, I think there was definitely a transition of the visions from visions that he was having to physical manifestations, like the being covered in mud, waking up and finding the knife in the front yard. And he goes, now they're real. They've become real. And so I was getting that Michael was introducing those elements to kind of transition, like to build upon his visions and use those to his favor, if you will.
Right.
And so I don't think he was doing a supernatural thing. I think he took the supernatural part and built upon it with physical things to build upon it. But it doesn't really explain it, and it's not well thought out.
It was a little first drafty as far as any of the explanation for that goes.
They took the Rise of Skywalker route and just introduced the Force transfer of objects power.
It was Palpatine who was doing the killing the whole time. Well, any final thoughts on Visions? Would we recommend it? You can find it on the Portland at the Movies YouTube page. I will link to a different YouTube site where I have found it, so you can go see it there. Again, hoping to smoke out Stephen Miller through copyright strikes to see if we can get him on the show.
Find him, yes. Yeah, I would say if you are a fan of Portland cinema, of things filmed in Portland, this helps to round out that, especially in like the cult classic kind of vibe of Stephen. Like, you need to know Stephen Miller to be a true connoisseur of Portland cinema, and this helps build that out. And so it's for a niche audience. I don't think Nick was watching it with me and he hated it, and
he was expecting a real movie.
He happened to be in the room. I think is like he was more accidental watching, and he just thought it was terrible.
Yeah, I was watching it with Sarah, and I think she had negative interest by the end of the 25 minutes that she saw.
Totally.
But I would say that if you're looking for a place to start in Portland movies, this would not be a terrible introduction.
All right. I would struggle. Would you say watch this first or Back Time first?
I mean, if you're going to watch both of them, then it doesn't really matter. But if you're just going to watch one, I would suggest Back Time.
Okay.
Agreed. Yeah.
The end. Well,
the end.
Speaking, go ahead, Mark.
No, that's all.
Oh, no, I was going to say, speaking of trying to smoke people out of the woodwork in order to talk to them, that inadvertently brings us to what we're going to be doing next month. So, Brian, do you want to give people a heads up of what will be happening next month?
Sure. So next month, our June episode, we received a message recently on our Facebook page from I believe his name is Ted Pfeiffer. Is that right?
Oh, yes.
Who was the writer of both Harvest of Fear and its sequel, Path of Evil, which we covered over the past two Halloween seasons. And we were not that kind, or we were not very big fans of either one of those films.
I believe at one point, Brian, you literally stopped down the entire podcast to say, I just want to be clear. This movie is terrible.
And then so he is sending us these messages like almost as he is listening to our episodes. And at one point he's like, all right, just finished Harvest of Fear. Can't wait to listen to Path of Evil. And you and I are like scouring the episode to be like, all right, what's the worst thing we said?
Can we take it down? Yes.
Went to listen to that first. Mark got off scot-free because he defended the movie and explained it in several cases. So but you and I we're not super kind, but yeah, so he contacted us and he asked, do you have the filmmakers on of movies that you quote hate? So it'll be, yeah.
Yeah, he still was willing to be interviewed on the podcast after listening to those episodes, which is incredible. And I'm really curious to hear how a movie like that is seen from, his perspective.
Yeah, initially I thought he was also the director, which really freaked me out. But he was the writer. He wrote it with his brother, I believe. He said his brother has removed his name and disavowed having anything to do with it. So it will be, yeah. I'm super intrigued. We may or may not watch a couple episodes of a Japanese television show about the Oregon Trail. We haven't quite decided on that. Next month, but for sure next month will be the first Portland at the Movies clapback with screenwriter of Path of Evil and Harvest of Fear. So do stay tuned for that.
On.
And I would recommend actually the Harvest of Fear episode that we did for Portland at the Movies is, I think, my favorite episode of the show, just because I got apoplectic with rage the second time I had to watch that movie. But so I would recommend listeners maybe go back and listen to our Harvest of Evil episode and to prepare for next month.
Ted, if you're listening, I fully expect you to let us know how terrible our podcast is.
Absolutely.
So I guess we'll find out. We can dish it out. So can we take it? We will find out next month on that Portland at the Movies. So Unipiper, is there anything that you want to promote right now in this weird time? What are you doing?
If anyone is at home and is feeling a little down and looking for ways to celebrate, whether it's a birthday or a graduation in the family, reach out. Visit my website at unipiper.com/birthdays, and maybe I can help you out.
Nice. Mark, what about you?
Well, Todd, you and I have a podcast called the Mark and Toddcast, and you can find us there at markandtoddcast.com. We talk about things that happen in Portland and science-y topics. And so on the weeks that we aren't doing Portland at the Movies, you can find us at Mark and Toddcast.
Yes, and oddly, we have been the most consistent during this COVID thing than we have in years. So it's been really fun. You did a really interesting topic last week about how they underwater construction and how they build things underwater. So that was really neat. Check out the Portland at the Movies YouTube page. Like I said, we've got a couple movies that we've reviewed, posted there for you to take a look at. And if you have been involved in any movies, if you've filmed, we've gotten a couple messages from people who turns out they were in Frozen Assets, sadly a deleted scene. So they had to spend all day at the park in Willamette in West Lynn and not even make the final film. So, but yeah, if you've been in a movie or have an experience or did something fun in the Portland movie scene, let us know. And we'll add that to our ever-growing backlog of stuff that we reviewed. So other than that, Mark, if you want to play us with whatever song plays over the ending credits, that would be great. It's probably a song by, what was that band's name?
Emergency Flatulence Fashion.
Fashion Ambulance, but I will take Flatulent Ambience or whatever you just said.
Let me see what I can find here.
All right. And listen to Fun Employment Radio. They're doing a show still every day of the week. You can find them at funemploymentradio.com, where you can also find some other shows. So thank you for listening. Oh yeah.
I just want to say a shout out to I can't remember his name now, but one of our listeners of the show. I was out riding around the neighborhood, spreading some bagpiping tunes, and somebody rode along beside me on their bicycle and said they were a fan of the show.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
A sighting in the wild for Portland at the Movies. That's pretty great.
Yeah, shout out to that guy.
Well, yeah, say hi to us. If you ever see us on the street, Mark, you can take us out. We'll talk to you later.
Nice. Thank you.
It's sexy music.
Nothing makes me think of our show than that music.
That sounds like a USA silk stockings.
There we go. Nice.
Awesome. We made an hour somehow.
We always do.